As far as things I would do differently,
Yeah.
I think in the beginning when I first started out, I really felt like I needed to partner with other people because I felt like, oh, this person's been in the business for a long time. This person knows more than me. I can learn so much from these people. And a lot of times I found that that was definitely not the case.
Mm,
Um, I learned more so what not to do because a lot of their internal processes were a joke. Their management style was that of, I call it like the overseer management style, where you're
mm,
standing over people. They're taking a big rock and making little rocks. That's not my management style. I like to work with people who can work independently and who can, follow a scope of work or follow instructions. I think more times than not, in those situations, I felt like I was carrying those people because I had like a real drive to learn and do different stuff. And I think sometimes when people are in an industry for a long time, they can get burnt out. And I think sometimes that energy is counterproductive to somebody who's new to the industry and has all the energy in the world and wants to take on the world, and then you're partnered with somebody who's lackadaisical, been there, done that. I think that's definitely one of the things that I learned. And actually, one of my mentors had said to me one time, he was like, "Man, Adrian," he was like, it's like all these people that you partner with, like these joint ventures that you're gonna look back like 5 years from now and you're gonna say to yourself, like, wow, like I really never did need, that person, or I didn't really need that opportunity because you're going to be so much further along. And, when you look back at it on retrospect, you'll feel like you didn't need that. You really could have just did it by yourself. And he was right, So I think that's one of the things that I would have not done. And then also too, working with lower level people who are extremely needy. Um,
yep.
what I mean by that is, um, like from a contractor standpoint, you've got levels to contracting and levels to contractors. You've got the licensed contractor who has the, general liability, errors and omissions. They've got professional portfolio. They've done a lot of jobs, and they have a lot of jobs under their belt, and they're licensed and they're professional. And you've got, the semi-skilled, you know, subcontractor, and then you've got, various levels of other type of contractors, day laborers, and such. And some of the lower level contractors, they just need a lot. They need rides to and from the job site. They've always got some kind of personal drama going on. Um, they usually use a lot of vices, and I think it decreases their productivity. Like
When you say vices, like elaborate on that. I want
vices, I was trying to be ladylike about it, but I guess
to.
I'll just take it down through there. People who work for beer and cigarettes,
Mm,
Hennessy and blunts. They are smoking weed, drinking, gambling, maybe interacting with a multitude of women or men or whatever they are doing. And so those are things that can cause them to be quite needy, because if you're making a certain amount of money and then you're spending everything you're making, or you've got a car that's undependable or a truck that's undependable, or you don't have the tools for a job, that kind of a subcontractor can be just a drain, mentally draining to deal with somebody who's um, like a child. They need everything. They need their baby bottle warmed up. They need to be laid down for a nap. They're just really needy, and it hurts your productivity when you're working with that type of an individual. Because you want to help people and see people succeed, but then you realize like I'm wasting way too much energy trying to help this person who's not trying to help themselves. So I think that's another thing I would just forego working with anybody who's not 100% self-sufficient. And like if you don't have your own vehicle, you don't have your own tools, um, I just can't work with you. It's just that simple.
So I'm curious, right? Because man, that's such a fascinating take. Because you can end up getting caught up with the wrong people.
Hmm.
You can end up leaning into folks,
And I have.
yeah,
Yeah, I have.
who are, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. They're burnt out, like they've given up. Like they found their level, they've gotten off on the third or fourth floor. You're trying to go to the 90th floor. Yep. And that's all they have to give. And it can blunt your enthusiasm and excitement for what you're doing.
Hmm.
And also you develop the habits. People get off on the third floor as opposed to 90th floor. I'm curious, like you had those experiences early on, but you still continue to seek out mentorship where a lot of people just check out. They say, you know what, forget about it, F it, I'm gonna do it myself, right? I'm curious to know what continued to spur you to seek out mentorship, support, guidance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Why are you willing to continue on with that part of your journey?
Because for every one crap experience that I had, I've had probably five beautiful experiences, like people who I can look back on and be like, wow, this person really helped me to take it to the next level. Like I'm thinking of like a ton of people right now. Their names are just popping in my head. Like, um, the gentleman who I was talking about who told me like all these partners and stuff, he's like, you need to cancel that. That's no, you don't need to be doing that. Like, I don't know how you do it. He was a vendor out of the Chicago area, like major, doing a lot of stuff. And he was like really helped me get myself together, like, like basically raised me up like I was his child. There's been a lot of people who have done that for me. Like, didn't want anything in return, wasn't on nothing weird, acting like a weirdo or any of that. They were just really genuinely were like, hey, look, I see that you're in this space. I'm in this space. I want to see you do good. So let me help you. Like I went to where he was covering his zones and he taught me personally how to change locks, how to do dry winterization, how to do a wet winterization, and a bunch of other stuff like hands on. Me and one of my girlfriends went and he taught us both like hands on how to do that stuff. And he just taught me a lot as far as like, and I asked him that question too, like what we're talking about. Like, hey Joe, if you had it to do over again, what would you do differently? And he was like, I like your business model. I like that you delegate everything out and you sub everything out. He's like, I would not invest a lot of my money in equipment and offices and trucks and having people, like employees. He's like, I like that you do the subcontractors, you 1099, you get your money off the top, they get their money, and then you're done with it. He's like, I think that keeping your overhead low is good. I have another person who they, partnered with me and helped me to take it to the next level as far as getting some certain systems in place. Like one lady was working with me and she was like, oh, we got to start using PPW, because it does this and does that. And she was like a master at it and she just knew so much. One of my tax preparers, she was like, hey, you got to do QuickBooks. Download this app on your phone right now. Like, so I've had many, many people who have poured into me like I was their child and, just had like the most utmost genuineness to see me succeed and answer questions and be available for me and invite me to stuff and just really extended themselves. So for me, I have had bad experiences with contractors, business partners, people trying to bamboozle, use, sabotage. Um, but for every one negative experience, I've had five beautiful experiences, like where people just like really helped me take it to the next level. And, and even when learning different things that maybe they did, where I asked them the same question we're talking about, like, what would you do different? They were able to share those things candidly with me. And I was able to like, okay, be like, okay, so that's something I definitely not going to do because of this, this, and this. Um, Especially as it pertains to when you're working with a certain type of client and like maybe like with mortgage field service clients, sometimes you're on a net 30, net 60, and you don't ever want to be in a situation where like they're owing you a whole bunch of money and your business could like fold because they owe you so much money and you're steady fronting jobs. You want to pull back and be like, hey, look, we need to get these invoices resolved. We do accounts payable and receivable every 2 weeks. You owe us a lot. And sometimes you may even have to sever a relationship with a client if you've had a long run and they're taking advantage of the fact that you're willing to, let them kind of float sometimes. So I would say, yeah, like I'm always going to seek out mentorships and collaborations because I feel like you can make more and do more collaborating with a group of individuals who have the same synergy as you do and the same energy and desires than you can by yourself. You can't be a lone wolf. A lone wolf in the
Mhm.
forest is dead. So that's why they run in packs. You need that. You need the security of having a pack, to me. So, and actually that right there, that tip came from another one of my mentors who is like a military guy and a broker and a lot older. But he had a lot of really good stories, like amazing stories. Because when he was born, he didn't even have civil rights. So, like hearing somebody that was born in that time and the stuff that they've done, and he's been an entrepreneur for like probably 50 years. So, you learn a lot from somebody like that because they've had a lot of different type of experiences, more so than what you're experiencing yourself.
I love it. I
What
love
about
it. Yeah.
you?
Um, as I was reflecting on this conversation, there are two huge mistakes I made. Made a lot of them, but there's two that really stick out to me right at this moment. The first being when I started my journey, I was working in an office where I was the only pepper in the room. So I constantly dealt with disrespect, derision, right? Sometimes feeling
Blatant, like blatant or like subtle?
both,
Okay.
both, alienation, you name it. I remember it was so bad that um, I found out the office actually had a pool of monies they were putting into a pool to see how soon I would quit.
Really?
So yeah, they were like, we're not going to give him any training, not going to give him any support. We're just going to see if he can make it by the sweat of his brow, right? So I remember when I first started my entrepreneur journey as an investment advisor in the financial services industry, I remember they gave me a desk, a phone, and a yellow pages. That was it.
What year was this?
Oh my gosh.
Was it like in the 80s?
Um, Early 2000s.
Okay.
And mind you, that's also when the .com bust transpired. So
Okay.
investment advisors had their tails between their legs. They were getting like beat down seriously for the bad bets people had made, right? It's the same nonsense you hear over and over again. Um, you know, get a good paying job, right? And we know that's an oxymoron, right? So I remember back then it was like get a good IT job, get a good software job, get a good job in that space, right? And you, in the .com space, you don't have to worry about ever losing ever again. And we found out different, right? It was the same thing in 2008. I remember 2008 vividly because I would get into it all the time with people who were in the banking, mortgage origination, real estate industry. And what did everybody used to say? Get a good job in real estate or own real estate. The property values will never go down. You don't have to worry about nothing, right? And of course, we saw what transpired. Right? I'm thinking about even now recently, right? Following the pandemic, everyone used to say, get a good government job. right? Get that good government job. You don't have to ever worry about not, having food or money scarcity. And look,
Here we go.
regardless how you feel about it, for better or worse, he just cut the education department. And we see people like, I'm talking to a lot of investment advisors who relied upon people who had government jobs on the state and federal level, and things going sideways in any respect. So I was in that kind of environment, right? And you had a couple of transitions of leadership in the agency that I was a part of, and they became more willing to train. They became more willing to help out the least of us who were struggling and trying to figure it out, right? And I love that experience because that's where I developed a lot of my entrepreneurship mettle, right? Where I'm like, I'm not going to blame anyone. I'm not going to wait for anyone to help me. I'm going to learn what I need to learn. I'm going to develop the habits I need to develop. I'm going to figure it out, right? In that kind of environment. So that was a positive aspect of that environment. But like I said, on the negative side, you showing up to only pepper, it doesn't even matter. Like, I remember, I was having like 5-figure days. I remember
What's a
after
pepper? What's a pepper?
like the only pepper in the room. So I'm in a room full of salt and I'm the only pepper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember even after I had a $30,000 day in business, and I'm seeing people having $2,000 and $3,000 days, and they're getting awarded and recognition and support and this, that, and the other. I had a $30,000 day in business, like whatever. Right. I can think of a couple quotes to echo those sentiments, but that's the environment I was in.
Any quotes you want to share?
It's one of those things. You have a PhD, right?
Mm.
And they'll still see you as some kind of way, right? It was no different in that environment. It didn't matter how hard I worked. It did not matter. Now, what ended up happening was that in that agency, once again, there was a lot of transitional leadership. A new leader came on board, and his whole thing was a rising tide lifts all ships. So he did not neglect the least of us. The bottom line is, in that environment, even as hostile as it could be sometimes, if you were willing to put in the work, he was willing to be like, okay, let me show you something. All right, let me make some resources available to you. And I remember like it was yesterday, one of my clients came in. He was a very well-to-do, up-and-coming attorney, done some phenomenal things since then. But I remember telling him, I'm getting up out of here, man. Like, I want to be in an environment where I'm appreciated. I want to be in an environment where I don't feel alienated. I want to be in an environment where I feel like people want to see me win, right? Which is interesting. I have an inverse conversation about that. But anyway, I want to be in a more supportive environment, like psychologically, mentally, culturally, otherwise. I remember he looked at me, he says, man, look, you stay in this environment because you're learning things in this environment that you're not going to learn elsewhere. You're getting experience that you're not going to get elsewhere. You're getting exposed to things that you would not get exposed to elsewhere. And once again, young, dumb, right? A little hot-headed, a little impatient, chip on my shoulder. I walked out of that environment. And I share that because I know there are individuals right now who are working jobs, and you probably hate the environment you're in. It's not getting you, you're not moving at the pace you want to move at, right? It's not rapid enough. You may be feeling that way. Or you just may be like, you know what? I hate the people around me. But I'm going to tell you, a job can be a beautiful thing because there's nothing like getting paid and earning on somebody else's dime. It's nothing like it, right? If you are in an environment where you are being exposed to things where typically you may not be exposed to certain things in terms of transactions, how people conduct business, identifying who the real decision makers are, if you are in an environment where someone's compensating you enough money, um, where you can just pick up that knowledge and soak it up, sometimes you got to be willing to be a little bit patient. Like I said, I'm glad I left the environment, but I'm also not a fool. I understand that probably staying there a little bit longer, I probably would have understood more in terms of being a leader, in terms of managing people who may not hail from the same background that I hail from, either socioeconomic, ethnically, or otherwise. Um, Certain habits, right? When the new leadership came in, despite the fact I still felt alienated from the majority of people there, um, when he said a rising tide lifts all ships, like I could see it. Like I could see the investment he was making, even if he was indifferent about me. And the leadership was indifferent about me. And so that is an error in judgment that I made. Um, the inverse is anyone who knows me, I am exceptionally stubborn. Like, you want to see something get done? Tell me it can't get done. And I will rise to the occasion. I will make it happen. Tell me it can't be done, and I will get after it, right? And on the flip side, I've been in environments, not just in business, but just socially, politically. Um, I've been parts of organizations where I could see people were not necessarily rooting for me. I could see that people didn't want to see me win, despite the fact that I've always had a synergistic effect. Like anyone who's being honest, if you've worked with me before, you leveled up. It is very rare. Like I can probably count on one hand in 20 years of my entrepreneur journey where I can, maybe I could point to maybe 3, 4 people where, okay, it just didn't work out for whatever reason. But the uber majority of people whom I've ever interacted with in business and otherwise for that matter, 9 times out of 10, probably 99% of the time, I've leveled them up, right? Um, but man, there's something to be said, right? And I'm almost contradicting myself, but it is what it is. There's something to be said by being in an environment where people want to see you win, by being in an environment where people appreciate your value, your skill set, your talent, your work ethic, your intellect, right? If you're around small people, those small people will actually be intimidated. They'll be even offended by the fact that you have the unmitigated nerve to reach higher and to want more and to raise the bar. They will fight like cats and dogs with you. And that is also a conversation needs to be had. Like I've put myself in environments way too frequently and put myself in situations way too frequently where the people just didn't want to see me win. You know, I think I hear people say, go where you are appreciated and accepted, as opposed to being where you're tolerated, right? And I've made that error in judgment. I mean, I really give myself a pat on the back because I was in a similar environment where I was literally helping an organization level up. I mean, like, I'm talking about 10x increase.
Okay.
And I removed myself from the situation. I was like, you know what? These people don't appreciate me at the end of the day. They don't see what I'm doing. They don't see the impact I've made. They don't see the synergistic effect that I've had on the people around me. They just looking out for their friends, or they looking to stay in their comfort zone, or they're looking to just not rock the boat. Whatever the case, whatever was motivating them, it was obvious to me that they weren't placing a high value in what I was bringing to the table. And of course, being an entrepreneur, the one thing we all learn, if you've been in business long enough, and whether you've led people or been led, man, if you're in an environment where the leadership or the decision makers don't reward a high level of performance, a high level of tenacity, a high level of just getting up and going to work and having a phenomenal work ethic, trust me, sooner or later, that company, that organization is going to fail. If you dissuade your peak performers, I don't care if you like them or not, if they're, you know, it's different if they're not a cultural fit in terms of principles and values, but you just don't like a person or they don't come from the right environment. You just don't vibe, whatever the case may be. You start dissuading your peak performers based on some superficial BS.com, your business is going to fail. And so those are two errors in judgment I've made off the gate. Stay in places where I was tolerated and not appreciated for too long on multiple occasions. I am very rarely do I make that mistake. But also, man, um, when you get in environments where people are achieving on a really high level, they're doing some incredible things. Sometimes you got to eat a little shit, right, to get what you need to get out of that environment. So those are two errors in judgment I made early on in my entrepreneurial journey, and even relatively, you know, not too long ago, I made those errors in judgment, but I corrected them. Those two things I think about right out the gate.
Okay. What were some things that you noticed where like people weren't um appreciating what you were bringing to the table? Was it just like a very nonchalant attitude, or was it like um people being passive aggressive? Because sometimes you could be in a office environment or in any type of environment. It could be contractors too, because I've had people that were very passive aggressive, like saying, "Oh yeah,
Mm.
Adrian, I got you. I'm gonna take care of that," and then going behind my back and being like, "Oh my God, Adrian's a train wreck. Every time I go to her job site, I have to like clean up after her, blah, blah, blah. Like she never finishes up. Her contractors are always leaving a mess for me to clean up. Like, but you just told me you got me and you're gonna take care of it." Like, stuff like that. So was it like that type of thing, like a passive aggressive, or like people just being nonchalant? Like what was some of the behaviors that made you realize that this environment, this group is not, they're just not.
Mm. That's interesting. I pay attention to language. I pay attention to language. So if you're an entrepreneur or partner or somebody working around me, I don't ever let you refer to anything you do as little, because every large corporation started out as an ideal,
Mhm.
right? So if I hear someone say, I got this little thing, or I'm working on this little project, I'm working on this little appointment, or I have this little meetup, or I have this little anything, for me, that's a red flag. So if you articulated about your own endeavors, that tells me your imagination isn't big enough. You don't have enough esteem.
Okay.
Because I mean, failure is just, it's part of the game. You're gonna catch that L.
Yep.
There's nothing little about what you're doing. Everything is an opportunity to get better and to level up and improve and sharpen the saw, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's nothing little. Um, Look, if you've just made a decision to take action, you have separated yourself from 99% of the population for real. We've all seen it where people show up to workshops, seminars, they get these nuggets and information they need to take action. I mean, opportunity can be like literally staring them in the face saying, come on, they don't take action. So as an entrepreneur, if you're listening in and you've taken action, you've at least begun the process, taking the first couple steps. That is huge. There's nothing little about that, right? And I also pay attention to people around me. If they're referring to endeavors, conversations, things I'm involved in as little, if they use words that communicate almost a degree of insignificance to what it is that I'm doing, for me, that's a red flag. And you just told on yourself, right?
And
Um,
it's expensive too. Like, cause
yeah,
I've had people do it to me, like, "Oh, hey girl, you still doing that little contracting stuff, your little construction company?"
there it is,
And
right?
I'll be like, "You know what? As a matter of fact, I am still doing that little contracting stuff."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I was paying attention to that. Also, look, I am a stickler for time. If I know I'm going to be late, I'm going to send a notification. I'm going to send an email. I'm going to send a text. That's the majority of the time. Um, the majority of the meetups, like if I have 100 meetups over the course of a month or 2 months, I'm going to show up 10, 15 minutes early to at least 90 of them. And every now and again, the BS.com happens, something transpires, car accident, I mean, whatever, right? But the bottom line is, I'm going to give you a notification. You're going to be aware. I'm not just going to pop up 15, 20, 30 minutes late. right? So I was paying attention to the fact that I'm exerting all this effort and energy to level up the organization, and people are real nonchalant about showing up, right? I think you and I had a conversation, and I gotta be careful about this because there's people who I'm actively working with. I got to coach through some things, right? But I remember someone had missed a meeting a couple weeks in a row, and they knew it was mandatory. Like, you miss 2 weeks in a row,
You're out.
don't text, call. No, you're waiting to the following month for you participating, and the person still had unmitigated nerve. And I was like,
I
you're
remember.
telling me, something right now, right? You got to pay attention to that. Do people respect your time? The other thing is, don't always take it personal, because if a person doesn't respect your time, 9 times out of 10, that means they also don't respect their time.
Or
That,
anybody
that's a
else.
red flag,
Yeah,
right?
or anybody else's time for that matter too. It's just
Yeah,
that's the way that they move and sit and how
yeah,
they are just totally oblivious to it.
yeah. Or, you'll have individuals where you are sharing ideas. See, a tactic that I employ with a lot of meetings, particularly if I know I'm in a hostile environment, you'll see that recorder that'll come up in my Zoom meetings, and I'll remove it. But if I know I'm in a hostile environment, or if I'm dealing with someone that I know potentially is not for me, that recorder goes on, and I don't remove it from the room. It gets recorded, right? So, I will purposely, and it is what it is. If you don't like it, figure it out for the entrepreneurs listening. I set traps, right? So if somebody shares an ideal and I'm in agreement with it, and then we bring the ideal up again, or I bring the ideal or the course of action or whatever it is that was being recommended, and then all of a sudden I begin to see a pattern where you are resisting taking or advancing something simply because it's me, simply because it's coming from me, I pay attention to that. I pay attention to that, and I trap people with that all the time,
Hmm.
right? Um, if I notice you are just being contrarian and logically it just doesn't make sense, I'll give you a pass. First, second, third time, maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Our priorities are different. Maybe we're analyzing the situation from a different purview. But if that keeps coming up over and over again, where I know you're just offering resistance for the hell of it, I start paying attention to things like that. Because at this stage of the game, I am so urgent. Like, there's so many things I want to accomplish and get done. If I'm in an environment where I see someone that's constantly behaving in that way, and if I see people are getting traction, man, look, I will remove myself in a heartbeat, because it's just not worth the time. I'm too valuable. I know that I make an impact in every environment I walk into. So, also, I had a situation where I'm a part of a lot of organizations, and I interact with a lot of people where I may know I'm more accomplished. I may know I'm more able, but I'll still play the subordinate position. So you can't do everything, right? And I also know there are things that I'm not exceptionally good at either. So if I'm in an environment where someone's exceptionally good at something, or I just see they're far more vested in it than I am, I'm gonna play the subordinate. I'm just gonna support, right? And I was in a situation where I was doing that, but I realized, like, somebody was spreading mistruths and lies, not just about me, but just people in general. And I'm having to work with this person. And if you know me, man, it's short leash when it comes to stuff like that. Like, if you're hating on people and it's just constant, if I find out you are telling fib, that's why I always tell people, if someone is hating on somebody and you don't know that person, you need to tread carefully. Need to tread carefully, because some people will have you out of pocket with people that are actually solid good people, but because someone is taking something personally or something trivial, or they're being petty, right? Be careful about that. But anyway, this person was doing that to other people and also did that to me. And so me, I'm looking at the leadership And I'm like, what you gonna do? I perform at a higher level than this person. I show up more consistently. I'm the tip of the spear in this environment. This person is fibbing and running amok. And for whatever reason, these couple leaders, they like still exercise like absolute fidelity to that person. And I was like, okay, I need to remove myself from the situation. Yeah, it's crazy, right? But
But what was their reason behind that? Like,
I mean, part of me, I just don't care.
I mean, yeah,
But
but like when
but
you brought it to their attention, they had like some type of
you
rebuttal,
know what it is?
a
Which
rebuttal, like, okay, this is why we're feeling this way. Because I don't know, I just feel like negativity in any type of environment, the more that you let it fester, it's going to keep growing and growing and growing, and eventually it's going to poison the whole
but
environment.
but sometimes what you find, particularly in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, is people would rather have somebody they can control
Okay, makes
and
sense.
somebody who's not a threat to their position than to have someone where they feel like I can't control this person, I can't manage this person, they're more effective than me. Um, I'm going to do what I can to limit their ability to level up. And you see it all the time. I mean, you see it all the time, right? Um, where folks are advanced based on their ability to be popular or likable or saleable. And that is a skill set. Is I'm not dismissing it. That's an important skill set. But you'll see other folks who you know are lifting the weight, that are doing the work, who are handling business. And when you have insecure leadership, when you have individuals who, you mentioned it earlier, right? What happens when you come across people who've gotten off on the third level, on floor 3, and you're going to floor 90, and you show up in their space and you start advancing changes and ideals and you start expecting more, right? Oftentimes people will try to push you down. They'll try to limit your ability to level up.
They're gonna
Uh,
rebel too. They're gonna
yeah,
rebel, and
fear,
they're definitely gonna
anxiety.
feel,
Yeah.
yeah, especially if there's like maybe some misogyny, because that's something that I've dealt with like
Mhm.
professionally. Especially if there's that element, um, it can be very unpleasant and draining, very, very, very draining.
You know, I've this has come up on multiple occasions when we've conversed on and offline, right? And for me, it's fascinating to hear that.
What, misogyny?
Yeah, because number one, in my formative years, like when I think about the years that made the biggest impact and really forged my character, it was in my grandparents' house, right? So I'm so thankful because while at that young of an age, I didn't understand the dynamics, I still got to see the dynamics of what it looks like when a man and a woman married, stay together, and make it work for decades, right? I got to see it, the degree of respect and regard and empathy that they have for each other, the patience, right? The lack of judgment, right? That they have for each other, that level of commitment. But the other thing is this. I think this played a huge role too for me. Man, my grandmother was so smart. She would destroy me in checkers or any type of game that involved strategy. You know, we had this volumes of encyclopedias. You know, me being a bit of a nerd, I like crushed that volume of encyclopedias. So I would read these encyclopedias every time I was, every time they were available to me, and I would learn some things, and I would take it to her, and she would know what was in the encyclopedia. Like she was very informed, very knowledgeable. Um, she didn't always let you know that she knew what was going on, but trust me, she was very astute, right? So I learned so the ideal of not respecting, oh, I mean, at every level, I mean, at every organization that I've been a part of, I've always leveled up women. Not because I'm simping for them, but the bottom line is I don't care, man. If you're intelligent, if you work hard, if you're a person of impact, I don't care what your sex is. And so I've never had an issue seeing women crush it and win. And quiet as kept, I'm very patriarchal in many respects, but it doesn't stop me from recognizing knowledge and talent and intellect when I see it. Right? Like, there's no way in the world I would have someone capable like you and as intelligent as you are and as industrious as you are disregard something that comes out your mouth. So for me, that's just like, wow. And I'll be honest, when I hear you talk about it, I'm like, it's just so I've seen it, I've observed it from a distance, but I guess in the environments that I operate in, it's so antithetical to what it means to be successful. That's crazy to me. I can't believe that you are in an environment. Let me rephrase that. It's not that I can't believe. It is surprising to me that you are in environments where people disregard the value prop that you bring. Right?
You'd be surprised. It's
Yeah.
happened a lot, and it's happened um so often that I'm somewhat numb to it just because
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to it. Um, and I do feel like a lot of people lose out because they're looking at it from the wrong perspective. They're looking at it from this perspective of like, oh, because that came from this person, I feel like it's not as valuable, or I'm not gonna implement that because this person, I just don't feel like they're on my level, especially with contractors sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Because, okay, yeah, no, I'm not carrying a 90-pound bale of shingles on my back and bringing it up on the roof and laying the shingles and, using the nail gun. But trust me, I know the steps, I know how it should look. And more importantly, I can pull the permit and I have the general liability and there's no insurance to be able to get the job, get the contract.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people, especially like older contractors, um,
Mm-hmm.
like I've had people say stuff like, "Oh, well, I've been doing this since, you were crapping in your diapers or whatever." I'm like, "Yeah, you probably have doing it since I was crapping in my diapers." But I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're more capable because of that. It means that at my age and with my gender, I've managed to level up and do things that you're not able to do. You're still in the field working by the sweat of your brow. I'm not. I'm in an office delegating and doing multiple jobs in multiple states and doing multiple businesses. So there must be some, a level of competency to be able to do that. And I think that a lot of times, especially in that industry and in that arena, it's very common. I've had like a inspector come on a job site and refuse to shake my hand or like give me like the look.
Mm-hmm.
I've had, um, you know, people like a superintendent on a job, it was a commercial job, refer to me as a silly little girl, quote unquote, to another woman who was working on my job site. And of course, I guess we were the only pieces of brown rice in a, huge rice bowl. And
Mm-hmm.
she was very offended by it, and she called me and she told me, and I was like, I appreciate you calling and telling me, but I'm so used to stuff like that. I'm like basically numb to it. And she was like shocked. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's happens all the time. But the one thing about that situation was that I'm a beast when it comes to um, like documenting stuff and
Mm-hmm.
having pictures to back up what I'm saying and doing per our conversation, recaps. And so at the end of that job, one of the superintendents had gotten fired because there was so much nonsense going on at this job site. And I really did feel like they were professionally trying to sabotage me, make me look incompetent. every step of the way. And if I hadn't been documenting and very meticulous about it, they probably would have succeeded. But because I had all of that backing me up and I was reaching out to other people about it, it didn't work. And, eventually that other person got fired because my contact person and one of my mentors was like, yeah, so and so they fired him. And I was like, oh, really? Wow. I wonder why. So, you just have to, I guess just take it as a learning lesson. And sometimes strategically too, I'll play the back. Like, I will just pretend like I'm the one of the project managers. I don't ever interact and present myself. I'm the owner of the company. I don't, that's not, especially in that type of setting, it's not beneficial at all. Or I'll just play the role of like an office flunky or an office minion, like, oh, I just do the paperwork in the office, whatever. That way people are kind of more comfortable with you know, the interaction, I think.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm listening to you, and that's something that over the course of time and my evolution, I've adopted that approach more and more. I remember 15, 20 years ago, I wanted you to see me coming. Like, yeah, I'm coming. I woke up today. So you all in trouble. Right? You were winning, but then I woke up and I wanted everybody to know it. And you know, here's the thing. I don't care so much about being right all the time now. I just care about the impact and the result. Whereas before, I spent a lot of energy and time early on in my entrepreneur career, just in general. If I believed I was right, I wanted to win that battle, win that point, right? Whereas now, I could care less. You want to be right, fine. But let's get to executing, get this thing done, right? Um, you'll spend a lot of time, man, trying to win battles. It reminds me of a book. I think it's by Patrick David, Bet David, but choose your enemies wisely.
That's the name of the book?
I believe it is. Let's look it up.
Okay.
So choose your enemies wisely. So choose. I know it's him. Wisely. No, I don't want to do that. Yep, Patrick Bet David. Choose your enemies wisely. I'd spent a lot of time choosing wrong enemies. Choosing wrong enemies, right? Winning battles. Um, and that dissuades you from winning the war. Right? I tell people that all the time. Like, let's take people aside and just the work I do in the B2B community, period. It's like my enemies are poverty. My enemies, ignorance is an enemy. People not having the resources they need to level up and grow. Because I believe if you have a healthy entrepreneur community, you have a healthier community, right? So things that hurt, dissuade, make it more difficult for people to level up as entrepreneurs, those forces are my enemies. And because those big macro forces are my enemy, is part of the reason why I'm solving bigger problems. And because I'm solving bigger problems, I'm being compensated more for what I did previously, right? In previous years. And sometimes, you find and argue with people who are not even going to be here 3-4 years from now. Like the economy's going to wash them out, right? I have a couple adversaries that I've been dealing with for years, and I'm looking at the health issues they're having. Them health issues are going to wash them out. They're not going to be here. You're spending your time concerned about what somebody said to you in middle school or high school. I mean, I'll be transparent. It could even be a parent. It can be someone that's in close proximity to you. But I remember years ago, I'm trying to remember, was it Brian Tracy? There was a couple of business philosophers that I was listening to a while back ago. And the basic just discussion is look, on a cold, rainy day, 90% of the people that you thought loved you, respected you, held you in high regard, or admire you, they're not going to show up to your funeral. So why in the world are you spending so much time concerned about people speaking ill or negative of you or not supporting you? I mean, unless you are actively standing in my way, like you are having a real impact that I can touch and I can feel, like, and I got to deal with you, man, I could care less. Right. And, but I'll be honest, back in the day, I wanted to win every argument. If somebody was a hater, I want to get back. I would
Yeah,
find
being
ways.
petty. That's
It
that
was,
petty
it wasn't even petty
happens
because at
sometimes.
least I don't know, I didn't get into a lot of petty battles, but
It's like rebellious. Like it's like a rebellion.
yeah,
It's
yes,
more rebellion because I'm very rebellious too, depending on like you said, when people say, oh, you can't do it, just say it, you can't do it. Like I remember doing something some years back where people were saying, oh, because of this, you can't do that. And then when I got it, I posted up something petty on Facebook, like I always love doing things that people say I can't do. Um,
yeah,
and it's like rebellion and too kind of petty because it's like, I mean, did I really need to post that? Not really.
yeah,
But I felt like, man, I'm about to post this, let you haters see your girl in action.
yeah.
I
It,
get,
it- it's just not an economical use of your time and energy, but also psychologically, right? Because what you think about, you bring about. The things you think about, um, man, have such a tremendous impact. And I just refuse to allow people to live rent free behind my eyeballs. Like if I'm thinking about you, you better be paying some rent. And the rent is support, the rent is contribution, the rent is edification, the rent is positivity. You got to be contributing something. If you're not contributing something positive to my being able to achieve my goals and uplift who I want to uplift, man, it's too expensive for you, right? And I will willingly admit, early on, I let too many people occupy too much space, too much. Um, I'm thinking about something. I don't want to do too much of a deep dive into it, but from just being a man, right? There's this scene, and I think I Love My Wife. It was Chris Rock, and I'm trying to remember what's the name of that actress that played in Scandal. Um, anyway, in the movie, um, he's being reprimanded by you know somebody higher up in the company, and the guy says, you'll lose a lot of money chasing women, but as long as you have your money, as long as you get your stuff right, there'll never be a shortage of them. And I see a lot. I mean, man, I can't even say I was chasing women. I've never had to quote unquote chase women. But as a man, if you are entertaining too many women, if you are out here playing the field and being stupid and silly, man, there's serious consequences for that. There's serious consequences for that. You'll pay, like, I've paid a hefty price for not understanding what my value prop really was. And when you are in a community or in an environment where your capacity to either entertain women or do whatever, you're being rewarded for that. Um, Man, that is costly.
I agree. That's what whenever I was talking about vices with like
Yeah,
contractors, I think that's another vice that causes people to be um ineffective, inefficient,
yeah,
robbing Peter to pay Paul. These comments are not specific to contractors, but like the people who I've dealt with who had
Mhm.
those issues, definitely you could see it in how they moved and how they sat and how they would manage jobs. And, like example, I just did a unit turn over the weekend. The guys started on a Friday, they got finished on a Sunday. I've had crews that had those proclivities and those vices where
Mhm.
something like that would have took them 2, 3 weeks, and it would have been me on their head, threatening to fire them, back charging them, all kinds of just ridiculousness. And when you cut rope and you don't even deal with those kind of people anymore, it's like, oh my God, like what was I
It's
thinking?
so
Like this is
much.
just you
I
know,
remember it like it was yesterday. There was another investment advisor in our ecosystem who shall remain nameless. And I remember sitting down with him talking about, strategically what we need to do to level up, grow our practices, right? And I remember sitting in the coffee shop with him, and it's like every woman that walked through, he was fixated on. You know what I mean? Like
while you guys were in your meeting?
we were in the meeting and I'm watching his eyeballs. So I'm paying attention to what he's paying attention to, right? And I'm sharing the PowerPoint. We're having a conversation. It's like every woman that walked by, he was just fixated on them. I mean, it was almost like I don't even think he realized he was consciously doing it, right? Um, and I'll tell you to this day, if I'm having a conversation with a group of men or a man, period, and they are like hyper focused on the women coming in and out the space or the building, it tells me right there what your vice is, and tells me right there that you know, your priorities are not in the right place. Your priorities are not in the right place. Like you are going to catch that L sooner or later. It's going to happen for you.
You are catching L's because obviously if that's your vice,
Yeah.
um, that's probably the most expensive vice of all besides like gambling.
Yeah.
Because if you're like hypothetically, let's say you're dealing with like several, women and you have someone who's high maintenance, that's costly. Like that person is, and or if you have several of them, it's like that's where all your money's gonna go. Or if you've got, several that you're dealing with, and then you have several kids, like it's like, okay, that's gonna be like like ravaging through your money. Like you probably
That's,
have like $20 for you can be one of the people calling me like, hey Adrian, can you put some gas in my truck so I can come to work?
oh,
Can you buy me lunch? I'm
oh,
hungry. Like
oh
probably
gosh.
gonna be like, the conversation you're gonna be having with me, like, like they went in my account and they cleaned me out, friend of the court.
Oh
Like,
my God. I remember you told me about
yeah,
somebody.
but see that right there, that person, oh my God, when I tell you they pulled a rabbit out of a hat, I was so impressed. I was like, oh my God. Like I just thought it was just like dead. We was dead in the water. Like the boat was just sinking to the bottom. And then it was like, hey, nope, we back on. Let's go. I'm like, okay. So
You
yeah.
know, it's it's like with entrepreneurship, when you're successful as an entrepreneur, it's easy to start drinking your Kool-Aid. You start drinking the Kool-Aid. Like you think you deserve success. You start thinking, I can't miss. You start thinking, I can't lose. I'm the special, right? I guess when you've been in business as long as I have and experienced the ups and downs that I've had, but also seen so many people who were winning and on top crash out, you realize how thin the margin is. Um, I don't necessarily look, luck is a real thing. Like obviously you get luckier if you work hard and do the right things, right? You get luckier. But wrong place at the wrong time, right place at the right time. The margin for error is just so small. If you're really going to do entrepreneurship on a high level, the margin of error is so small. It just any small error in judgment or investment in something that doesn't serve you can really just crush you and knock you completely out the game.
I agree.
And, you know, I think about that at the stage of my life that I'm in. It's just certain mistakes that we've talked about today that I don't have the liberty. Like, I don't assume that I'm going to rebound every single time because too many people don't rebound. I've seen good, hardworking, honest people doing good work in their endeavor catch that L. Um, what that's taught me is there's a price for success and the rent is due every single day. And you miss too many days because you're out here effing around and not focused on the right things. And there's a hefty price to pay.
I agree.
Yeah. So, you know, as we were having this conversation, that's been a theme that I've been thinking. It's been running through my mind the entire time. It's like, mm,
I mean, you have to stay humble. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, fairly important because, like you said, you've seen a lot of successful people take L's and not recover, and so have I. And we both have had ups and downs. I've had some times where, like couple contracts went like totally sideways, ruined the relationship with the investor. And, you know, it's like one of those things where you're like, damn, it was unavoidable, not anything that I would have wanted to happen. But you do have to constantly be thinking several steps ahead, thinking about pivoting, making sure that you're communicating with your team and making sure that you are empowering your team. Like before we jumped on here, I was doing a Zoom call slash training with my subcontractor liaison and someone who we brought on to help with some of the real estate line tasks. And I always, when I do those type of meetings, will say, hey, I really appreciate you guys, and we wouldn't be here without, your support and your help and, the things that you take off my plate. If there's ever anything that you feel like you've seen or heard of that you think we should try, even if it has nothing to do with our industry and what we're doing, I'm very open to trying new things, open to hearing ideas. I want your ideas. I want you guys to share stuff with me. Because I feel like you have to empower your team and make your team feel like they're part of the creative process. And even sometimes, like with some stuff, like we had some subcontractors that were like kind of bottom of the barrel doing some stuff for
Mm,
Lido. And I asked Richard, I was like, I don't know, how do you want to deal with them? Because they were kind of giving him a hard time. And he was like, I just want to remove them from the network. They're worthless. And I was like, well, okay. I mean, you're the one who's mainly dealing with them. I mean, if you don't feel like they're helping us, to get further, then, and they're just a thorn in your side, then okay, that's fine with me because, they didn't really do a lot of jobs anyways. And I think like when people are disrespectful to like the people who are on your team, it's like, well, you're really not helping us to do anything. You're just in the way. So, and I didn't even really mind that he had did that because they've worked with us off and on for years and they'll leave and they'll come back. And like when I was looking through the vendor packets, I was like, damn, I didn't realize that they had been with us so many times. It had like it was over such a long period of time. So sometimes it's okay to just let your team make a decision about something. So it's like one less thing I even have to deal with, because I'm not
mm,
dealing with them anyways directly. He's dealing with them. So
mm,
I think that's important. You have to like you said, you can't get too cocky with it. You have to always remember that one false move, you should have made a left and you went right. It could, have a negative impact on not only you, but your team too. Because they're
mm.
depending on you to keep the momentum going, keep growing your brand, your companies. Um, so you have to keep your finger on the pulse at all times.
Yeah. I mean, the last thing I'd share before we kind of wrap up is, yeah, what you just said is triggered it. And I've mentioned this before on numerous occasions, but you just got to understand not everybody's going to make it.
Oh, absolutely.
Not everybody's going to make it. You know, the people you hung around when you were earning 30K Those people are not going to be around when you get to 100. When you get to 100, people are there. When you get to 150, they ain't going to be there. When you get to 200, they're not going to be there. If you are blessed and fortunate enough to build a business where you go from 250 to a million, whether it be your partners, your staff, your network, all those things are going to change. Like, it's not lonely at the top. You just have to make new friends. And it's not that you diss the people that you were building with and working with and conversing with and spending time with. But as you begin to level up as an entrepreneur, your priorities change and your responsibilities change. And
Absolutely.
the more responsible you become for people, particularly if you're in a business where you're dealing with 5, 10, 20, 100, 200, 500, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, whatever the case may be, man, you begin to realize how slim or how small the margin for error is. You can't tolerate energies that can detract and deter from you. And that's tough. Like that is something that up until maybe very recently, I've finally been able to shed myself of that error in judgment. Because there are many times where I could have leveled up and grown or expanded, achieved certain things, and misplaced loyalty for individuals who are not willing to pay the price to come along. Definitely,
I
definitely,
I think we all have, especially if you
yeah.
go from like an underserved community. Your natural desire is to, oh, this person have this
Mhm.
relationship with them. I want to bring them with me. I want to see them do good too. But a lot of times that's just not enough because if they don't want it for themselves, you can't want it for you and them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they will feel like you're doing too much or you are trying to like force feed them, you know, stuff that they don't
Mhm.
really even have a desire to do,
Yeah.
it
When you hear that doing too much, look, you listen to this, you hear somebody tell you doing too much. Sometimes it's true, but sometimes you need to raise the eyebrow.
well, sometimes it's just like, well, I mean, the opposite end of that is you're just not doing enough.
Yep,
So I
there
mean,
it
quite
is.
frankly, like, if you don't desire to improve yourself and be the best version of yourself on a daily basis, that's cool. Dale, disfrútalo, hazlo. It's all good.
Mhm.
But not everybody is on that, and not everybody feels the same way about that. Everybody else, like, I know you want to be the best version of yourself. I definitely want to be the best version of myself. So when people say stuff like that, it is a red flag, and I'll be like, oh, okay, well, I'm glad you told me how you really feel, and I'll proceed accordingly. And I'm not offended by that person giving me their honest assessment that, because I always say to people too, like, especially in my like inner circle, people who I talk to all the time, I'm not for everybody. To some
Mhm.
people, I am too much. To some people, they'll be like, oh, her, no, not at all. Okay, cool, no problem. That's
Mhm.
fine with me. Like, I'm not for everybody.
Mhm.
So, and I'm sure for you too. It's like, like you were talking about the people who are acting weird and doing all the kind of weird stuff. Like, okay, I mean, you don't vibe with what I'm trying to do. That's cool. Like, you stay in your lane, I stay in mine, and I'm going to continue to, grow with the people who want to grow with me. It's just,
Yep.
I'm not going to waste energy on, spilled milk or sour milk for that matter. If it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. And it's not to say that I'm right and you're wrong. It's just we're different and we can agree to disagree and, respect, whatever that other person's thoughts are and move forward and not waste any more energy on it. If it's honestly for me, most time, like especially right now, if it's not an income generating opportunity or something positive where I can feel like I've learned something, I just don't have the energy for it. I really don't. Um,
Great.
I just don't. And I'm not going to waste. Then that goes for friends, family members, associates, everybody. It's like a blanket policy that I have that I probably implemented maybe, I would say 10 years ago,
I
where
like,
I don't have the energy for it. And I'm not gonna exert myself mentally because I have to conserve my energy for the things that are important, and if
Yeah,
you're draining yourself trying to deal with, hostility, negativity, or people who are, trying to sabotage you or whatnot, it's like, well, I mean, that's draining a lot of my energy and I need to be focused on these other positive things, not negativity. So I
I agree 100%.
yeah.
Yeah. So, as usual, we can go on and on, but I'm looking at the time. I know you have stuff going on. I do too.
Yes,
Um,
to
but what I will say for the listeners, so once again, if you have been with us this far, you know what to do. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that share button. Sharing is caring. Let the universe and or the algorithm know that you receive value. And of course, the more you plug in, the greater the audience grows, the more we're able to do more and bring more value to you as our listener audience. So celebrate success in advance. Goodbye for now.